Welcome you all to our Gobeshona Global Conference 5. And here we are sitting for discussion on advancing loss and damage actions at national and local levels, which we have the lessons from our strength project. So before I start and give the mics to my other colleagues who will be there for all of the presentations and sharing the knowledge from the ground from different countries aspect, I'll just go for a brief overview of what strength project is. So the the full form of the strength project is strengthening loss and damage response capacity in the global south. And here we are like 4 countries from the global south. We are working together for doing different kinds of activities regarding loss and damage, specifically for the capacity building as well as for the policy advocacy. So our target is how we can like do more collaborative approach work on the loss and damage ground for alleviating our voice regarding loss and damage. So it includes all of the things on the loss and damage, for example, evidence collection, for example, research, and also how we can like translate these evidences to our level of the policy. It can be like both, it can include like all of the level of policy advocacy. It includes the local level policy advocacy, national level, as well as international level. And also it's kind of like giving a solidarity vibe among these global south countries, where we need to like work more into the loss and damage ideas and the understanding of the loss and damage concept for the ground level. So there are 4 partners who are working in this ground, and we have our principal investigator from IFSD, Australia, Hemant Oja. He will be talking after the presentations. And also we have, including Bangladesh, we have 3 more country partners. From Nepal, we have PRC, we have ICCCAD from Senegal, and we have Vanuatu. It's our pleasure that we got got the Department of Climate Change from Vanuatu as our partner, and they're one of the representative of the Ministry of Climate Change Vanuatu is also present here, Dr. Christopher Barlett, and he will be also like talking after the presentation. So there are my colleagues from Nepal, Sneha Rai, from Vanuatu, Brian Maltera, from Bangladesh, Torin Zaman Raya, and from Senegal, Ibrahima Kamara, who will be presenting from their aspect of understanding and what we are doing under this project. From the research to the policy advocacy, all of the things you can learn what we are doing from the country aspect, what we are doing in collaborative approach also. So now I'll hand over to my colleague Adiba, and I think it will be a fruitful session, and I hope you all will be joining in the breakout sessions. And I wish it to be a very fruitful workshop for all of you to give you a more context on this project and how we can be more inclusive on regard of loss and damage evidence collection as well as policy advocacy. Over to you, Adiba. Thank you.
Thank you, Shudhapu, for sharing the brief overview of what strength is and how we are working, how we are collaborating among 4 countries, and to actually do something to fight against the climate change, impact of climate change. With that, I would like to now invite our country representatives who are here with us today. Brian, would you like to go first to share the overview of what you are doing with from Strength Project in Vanuatu? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Apu, you're audible.
Brian, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me clearly? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, good day, good morning from wherever you are. Yes, thank you for this opportunity for giving me this time to share the L&D context for Vanuatu. Firstly, based on the uh, outline program being shared, firstly, the first-hand experience of climate impacts beyond the adaptation limits. Vanuatu in the past decades has experienced catastrophic and existential climate change impacts. There's a huge range of adaptation measures implemented that have been effective in the face of worsening of global heating and its impacts. In Vanuatu, some of the first and loss and damage experience includes the saltwater intrusion and scarcity in some of the low-lying islands uh, like Emau, Maro Village, which the strength project normally do the case study on, as the rising level of sea level that have led to saltwater intrusion into groundwater sources, returning wells through undrinkable and living communities without access to clean water. Waterborne disease, particularly among children, have become prevalent, leading to loss of life and livelihood disruption. The communities are now considering of relocation due to the escalating saltwater intrusion, water crisis. Another one is that the devastating of cyclones. Vanuatu has suffered a number of Category 5 tropical cyclones over the last few years, including events that it's result in economic loss and damage of more than 60% of its GDP and destroyed endemic and endangered species and ecosystem, which then buried some of the water sources, uh, renewed years worth of crop production, and caused more than half of Vanuatu's students to lose a year of more of education opportunity as their schools were destroyed. Loss and damage is not a result of Vanuatu's people doing everything possible, but communities in Vanuatu had been working for decades to adjust to the changes they are not responsible for causing. Every household in Vanuatu has paid for and implemented their own adaptation measures to protect their loved ones and livelihoods. But climate change is moving too fast and providing too severe for our adaptation efforts. The limits have been reached and we are living of loss and damage every day. Vanuatu is on the leading edge of loss and damage action. From our international engagements like taking a taking a climate loss and damage case to the International Court of Justice, asking for clarity on the legal consequences for states that breach the international climate obligations, and also requesting an amendment to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court to recognize the crime of ecocide. Sitting on the board and also sitting on the board of the new fund for responding to loss and damage in PCH rotation with Fiji and Cook Islands. As well as our domestic leadership on loss and damage initiative, it includes a fully costed loss and damage section in the Vanuatu's NDC, National Determined Contribution to the Paris Agreement, and also it includes a standalone chapter in the Vanuatu's Final Transparency Report, and it also has a full inclusion of loss and damage actions in the new National Adaptation Plan, NAP, renamed the Vanuatu National Adaptation and Loss and Damage Plan. A new loss and damage policy framework, which includes a local definition of loss and damage and a typology of action that simplify our efforts to affect, minimize, and address impacts. And it also covers key issues like non-economic loss and damage, slow onset events, and future planning for uncertainty. Lastly, not the least, address finances flow for loss and damage, including court order compensation to climate victims, international levies and taxes, and the establishment of a new national loss and damage fund, which will then provide direct access to affected individuals through cash transfers, small grants, payment of insurance premiums, and many more. Much of this work is based on the research and analysis undertaken by the Strength Project here in Vanuatu, which commenced in 2023 and has been centered around an innovative loss and damage policy lab process. Working with the Department of Climate Change and the National University through the Strength Project, these policy labs have helped us uncover tangible measures that addresses the harm being suffered by our communities and the indigenous groups. In the village of Maro on Emo Island, where the Strength Project normally do the case studies on, we undertook a loss and damage policy lab to discover a range of solutions to address loss and damage. This particular village, Maro, it has a total of 300 people living at the sea level on the beach between a lagoon and the open ocean. Climate impacts are increasing severe, including the death of pandanus palms, which are used to weave traditional baskets, and the lowered productivity of critical root crops like sweet potatoes and yams. But the most salient outcome of the policy lab was the articulation and agreement by the community that the limits to adaptation are so stuck and the storm sheds and sea level rise impacts are so severe that the only viable option for the continuation of the community is relocation to higher grounds. The Strength Project is now facilitating the country's first planned relocation of a coastal community. What will be a model for the more than 100 villages now severely threatened by sea level rise and other climate impacts. Through these multifaceted approaches, Vanuatu is not only working at the pace to address the climate change impacts manifesting locally, but also setting a precedent for other nations in high ambition of loss and damage action, climate policy, and new and additional finance. Once again, I thank you very much for this opportunity to share Vanuatu's experience and the work of the Strength Project. We look forward to learning from other particular vulnerable developing countries as we walk the path for finding viable solutions to address the worst part of climate crisis, irreversible and irreparable loss and damages. Once again, thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for sharing the overview of what you are doing from this Strength Project in Vanuatu. Now, I would like to invite our uh, country representative from Bangladesh, Ms. Taurin Zaman, to share the overview of Bangladesh case study. Ms. Taurin Zaman. Do we have Sneha with us? Sneha?
Torin was here. I her a while ago.
Shubha, can you check with Taurin?
Yes, I'm calling.
So I can see Ibrahima just joined. Ibrahima, can I request you to share your your, share your presentation as a country representative from Senegal. What strength and what you work and the activities that you do at Senegal through the case study. Ibrahima, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, nice to be online. It's very early here. So, okay, I will send you my presentation.
Adiba, in Torrance, like Torrance doesn't have the internet connection because of the.
Vous êtes désormais le co-animateur.
She'll be joining soon. Okay.
Ibrahim, sir, you can present yourself. We have made you the
Okay.
co-host.
Okay. Oh, okay. I am Ibrahim Kamara from Senegal. So I am one of the member of the Senegal team strength team of Senegal. So my background, I am a scientist in climate and ocean science. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you all. Yeah.
Thank you. Ibrahima, can you start your presentation, the case studies, the discussion actually, you are going to discuss the case study. Can you start that?
To make my presentation?
Yes, your discussion and the case study.
Oh, okay.
Can you start?
Okay. Let's share my screen.
Yes.
Nazib Sugan est entré dans la salle d'attente. Appuyez sur CMD plus Tilt pour ouvrir la fenêtre contextuelle ou accéder au panneau des participants pour admettre ce participant. Presse CMD plus U to manage the waiting room. Nazib Sugan a quitté la réunion. Nazib Sugan a joint de meeting. Anjuma Akteaki est entré dans la salle d'attente. Appuyez sur CMD plus Tilt pour ouvrir la fenêtre contextuelle ou accéder au panneau des participants pour admettre ce participant. Presse CMD plus U to manage the waiting room. Anjuma Akteaki a quitté la réunion. Anjuma Akteaki
Sir, we cannot see anything. Are you sharing anything?
Can you
Vous
see
avez
my
lancé le
screen?
partage d'écran. Les participants peuvent maintenant voir votre
It's
application.
visible now. Thank you.
Okay.
Un habit assigned to tout le monde. Please share your screen with US.
Is it okay? Can I go ahead my presentation? Okay, thank you very much. So
Un habit assigned to tout le monde. No ITS visible to US.
so my presentation will be on as I said, on what we are actually currently doing in the project strengths. So the title is L'Océan de Metz in the Senegalese ground nut basin. We will focus on a small area which name is Ngayohem in the department of Fatick. So my presentation will be, we will do firstly a small context, and talk a little bit on a methodology and present our study area. And we will talk on our result of key interview as well. And finally, we will do a conclusion. So as a context, we already know, I think I did not follow the presentation. I did not follow the presentation of my other colleague, but I think we have is the same context. It's the context of climate change. Senegal is strongly impacted. Senegal is, as I was said, that Senegal is strongly impacted by climate change, and the manifestation is here. I can show you some image. It's a flooding. It was last year, and besides the flooding, also we are faced with a drought, and also with coastal erosion. It is some image only to show what we are currently how Senegal is currently impacted. So to contribute to the fight against climate change, Senegal has elaborated his national his NDC, which is mainly based on adaptation and attenuation. Senegal also elaborate his country program, and also there are many sectoral NAPs also process. Totally, we have Senegal identify 10 sector for his national adaptation plan. And in all of these sector, the vulnerability of the sector are identified, are accessed, and also we identify also the priority adaptation, and we identify adaptation and prioritization, because we can have many adaptation options, but we have to prioritize which adaptation is the most and which one is coming and go on. So, but oh, I'm not in presentation mode. Okay. Is it okay? Can you see good? Okay, so however, we identify adaptation option.
Appuyez sur
However,
CMD
the
plus tilt
implementation
pour
of
ouvrir
this
la fenêtre
adaptation option is
contextuelle ou
limited by
accéder
the
au panneau des
availability of
participants pour
qualified
admettre
human
ce
resources,
participant. Presse CMD plus
adapted
to manage the
technology, and
waiting
also
room.
financial
Amar Gabé a
resources.
quitté la
So that's
réunion.
why the Senegal
quitté la
needs
réunion.
to take into account climate
de
in this
meeting.
loss and
2 milliards 18
damage.
millions 631
So what is our
076
methodology?
Faria
Our
5 a
methodology
quitté
is
la
mainly
réunion.
based on
2
literacy
milliards
review.
18 millions
So we see
631 076 Faria
this
5
document,
HAS journée
the
de
NDC
meeting.
report, the sectoral NAPS, disaster risk management report, also some loss and damage report, not mainly at national level, because at national level there are not many things done. Maybe when I say loss and damage report, maybe sometimes it is at Africa regional level or international level, and also on. And the second part also is also to do a kind of focus group in our study area, and also to do a key informal interview. And the last one is to organize what we call a policy lab. This is our main methodology. The fourth one: literature review, focus group, key informal interview, and policy.
Appuyez sur
Policy
CMD
lab.
plus tilt pour ouvrir la
So
fenêtre
here I
contextuelle
present
ou
our
accéder
study
au panneau
area.
des
So as I
participants
said,
pour
our study
admettre ce
area name is
participant.
Ngayohem,
Presse CMD
based
plus
in the
to manage
Brunei
the waiting
Basin.
room. À Timolik, Bangladesh HAS journée de meeting. Dame Kyonan DHCT a quitté la réunion. Pacha Caruter est entré dans la salle d'attente. Appuyez sur CMD
here
plus
is
tilt
our
pour
study
ouvrir la
region,
fenêtre contextuelle
Ngayohem.
ou accéder au panneau des
The green one is our study area here. It is located in the Fatick region, as I said. In terms of distribution, population distribution, there are more women than men. So we have 51% at least 52% of women. Again, 48.
fenêtre contextuelle ou accéder au panneau des
48.
participants pour admettre ce participant.
So here I will present our KIE results. Firstly, I present the
Hi,
localization
Ibrahima. Sorry to stop you here.
of respondent.
Hi, Ibrahima. Can you hear me?
MD Zafar Alam Guyan, CMO, Bola et Patua Kalito tout le
Someone
monde.
is speaking or not?
Gal Sound interrupte concentration. Youkan a deux subtitles. Econion Gedel est entré dans la salle d'attente. Appuyez sur CMD plus tilt pour ouvrir la fenêtre contextuelle ou accéder au panneau des participants pour admettre ce participant. Presse CMD plus to manage the waiting room. Sadia acte.
So here we have presented our study area and also all the videos that we done. Totally in our study area we have 18 villages, but we since we cannot do the 18 villages, we choose to do a key informal interview in 13 villages, and in total we interviewed 124 people. So in terms of gender distribution and also age, the people that we interview, they have
Chandra Biswa a quitté la
we have
Brian Maltera Vanu a tué HAS
65% of men and 35% of women. And the most represented age between
Amargabe a quitté la Réunion.
between
Et
30,
Moujadou
30,
Koulou,
30,
subtitle Wood Bibete den voix ouvert.
36 to 17.
Hi, Ibrahima. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi.
We all are hearing two languages. One is French and one is your English.
Yes, I am
Can
trying
you
to see.
stop the interpretation from your side?
Can I?
Can you stop the interpretation from your side?
Yes, but I don't know why he did. It's the first time I don't know. Admit. Yes, I only me. I am not why he did. He's doing this, but let me say this. Yep.
Yes.
Uh,
Resume.
Enter. Oh. Is it okay now?
Yes, but when you start speaking, there is two languages. We hear two
Oh.
languages. One is French and one
Joy
is
est entré dans la salle d'attente. Appuyez sur CMD
I don't
plus
know
tilt
why.
pour ouvrir la fenêtre contextuelle ou accéder au panneau des participants pour admettre ce participant. Presse CMD plus to manage the waiting room. Maxura Nashita a quitté la réunion. Maxura Nashita a joint de meeting.
Like arrêtez le partage. Let me see. Hot uniquement, tous les participants. Let me share again my screen to see if what I
Les participants
No.
peuvent maintenant voir votre application. Vous avez lancé le partage d'écran.
It's not solved.
MD.
not,
Joël Alsanra est entré dans la salle d'attente. Appuyez sur
I
CMD
don't
plus
know
tilt
why
pour ouvrir
he
la
make the
fenêtre
prediction
contextuelle ou
because, it's
accéder
the
au panneau
first
des
time.
participants pour admettre ce participant. Presse CMD plus
I
to
don't know
manage the
when,
waiting
how
room.
to stop it.
MD. Joël
If you
Alsanra a
have
quitté la
any
réunion.
idea.
MD. Joël Alsanra a joint de meeting.
Keeper, chat. Afficher les aperçus de discussion. Et diaporama. Transcription.
Ibrahim.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you share your presentation with us? We can share that, and meanwhile, maybe Taurin can go share the presentation from Bangladesh side. You can come over later.
Thomas Sidel est entré dans la salle d'attente. Appuyez sur CMD plus
Can you
tilt
just
pour
stop
ouvrir la
sharing your
fenêtre
screen?
contextuelle ou accéder au panneau des participants pour admettre ce participant. Presse CMD plus to manage the waiting room.
Let me try anything something else.
Can you share the presentation with me? I can share it from my side. And meanwhile, I would like to request Miss Taurin, to share the presentation from Bangladesh side. Taurin,
Yes,
over
yes.
to
Can
you.
you hear me?
Yes.
Just a minute. Let me just. 'Cause, can you all see it? The presentation?
Yes.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone from Bangladesh. I'll be presenting on this Bangladesh strength case study and on the urgent loss and damage financing needs for climate migrants in Boishal. So before I start, I'll just like to apologize. I have a small cold problem, so I'm really sorry for that. So let me start with the context. So our the strength project, our focus was on the southern Bangladesh, specifically the region of Borishal, and the two districts in Borishal Shodar and Mehdiganj. So we conducted in 2024. We conducted one case study there, and two local LTPLs and one national LTPL in Dhaka. So, based on our case study, I'll be presenting on the context and findings from the case study at the beginning, and then talk about the LTPLs. So, the communities in southern Bangladesh are facing intensifying and deepening climate change threats like flooding, coastal erosion, and saline intrusion. This flooding is both flash floods and prolonged floods due to erratic rainfall and unpredictable weather patterns. According to World Bank, 68% of Bangladesh's coastal land will be affected by saline intrusion by 2050. These impacts are causing irreversible losses and damages, threatening local communities' livelihood and survival. We'll be talking more about this in the next slides. So, before going into the gaps, let's talk about the adaptation and DRR efforts that are being done in Bangladesh and particularly in Borishal, because the government is doing its best to actually implement interventions in the region. For example, there's lots of infrastructure development going. In fact, most of the investment from climate action are being invested in climate infrastructure. Interventions like embankments, river embankments, cyclone shelters, and community clinics are being done, and also roads. New roads are being built to enhance climate resilience. Then there's climate smart agriculture initiatives. Both the agriculture office and the local agriculture office, local government, and the NGOs are intervening and introducing new climate smart tools and crops and seeds to the smallhold farmers there, for them to for them to address the different challenges like saline intrusion and flooding, which is actually affecting their yields. Then there's a training and capacity building programs which are being done by NGOs and also by government, but mostly by NGOs, which are focused on promoting climate smart agriculture. So what the government and NGOs do, they give some climate resilience seeds and crops to the or fertilizers to the farmers, and then train them on how to use it. And also some trainings are being done for small business owners on small business skills. And also there are DRR trainings for both civilians who want to be volunteers, so that they can act as volunteers and support the disaster relief, disaster risk preparedness before cyclone or during cyclone. But despite these interventions, there are still persist some adaptation limits, which was the focus of our research and our study, case study in the last year. These adaptation limits include limited livelihood options. So during our consultations and KIIs with the different, we are not going to deep into the methodology of the KIIs we did. I'll just focus on the findings. Based on the KIIs and consultations we did, we found that there are very limited livelihood options and diversification of livelihood options for the different migrants and also the different community members. For example, there are farmers who take smallholder farmers who take farms on lease, and then there are fishermen who are also restricted from fishing for a certain months. And these farmers are also facing, because of unpredictable and erratic rainfall, they are not able to predict the different farming seasons, and as a result there is a lack of yields. And because of lack of diversification of livelihoods, this community members are not able to look for other or seek other sources of income in the months that they're not able to farm or fish. Limits of climate smart agriculture. Like I said, the government and the local government and NGOs are giving providing support for climate smart agriculture, but because of the increasing climate change impacts and increasing hazards, they're unable to cope. The climate smart agriculture that's being introduced, it's unable to. The farmers and the fishermen are unable to cope with the changes and the variability. As a result, there's a limit there to that adaptation. Even the climate smart tools are not, or the climate smart crops and seeds are not able to help them be climate resilient. And there's also a complaint about this agriculture not being accessible to a larger community members. The scope of the number of people accessing this benefits is very limited. This also needs for better maintenance. For example, in last year when we spoke to some health workers in the community in Mehendiganj, they said that a community clinic was built 4 years earlier, but during a cyclone 3 years ago, that community clinic was damaged and it's still inoperable because it was not maintained or fixed after that cyclone. So even though this new infrastructure is being built, there's a lack of or limitation of them being maintained or fixed after some the increasing frequency of hazards. This can also be I think contributed to limited funding the government gets. So due to these limitations, there's also some gaps in local responses in addressing loss and damage in the southern community of Bangladesh specifically. For example, the residual risks like saline intrusion and infrastructure damage remain in the efforts to actually address them remain insufficient, as mentioned earlier. There's also complaints of corruption. For example, elite people, the elite of the societies, they're accused of land grabbing and taking like grabbing farms and taking lands from the poor, and that results in increasing disparity. And also there's also like I said, lack of funds. The government uses its domestic resources, but international funds are not enough to address this local responses, address this local loss and damage. Then there's also increased climate variability and the frequency of hazards, which again leads to limited livelihood options, and that leaves the households in crisis. For example, there are many households in the Boishal Shodor area where the households operate as shops as well. So they have a shop out in one room of their house, and another room is for their living. So what happens during hazards like floods and cyclones, those shops are closed, they're not able to access the supplies to operate their shops. So there's also, so even though they're trying to have some alternate livelihoods, it's being affected by increased climate hazards. This leads to financial stress, pushing families to migrate within Borishal and outside of Borishal. And there we also found reports of child labor, where children were forced to leave schools, drop out of schools, and seek labor, leading to education disruption. And also some girls were dropped out to get married so that to relieve the families of their financial burden on and having one additional member to feed. This leads to systematic social impacts of climate change, like I said, education disruption, and also the disproportionate impacts on women, which are not being addressed enough by the NGOs and these local stakeholders, local government acting in the communities. These social impacts also entail mental and physical health impacts such as stress-related disorders. There's been reports of hypertension and also disease breakouts like skin allergies. A community in Boishal Chodar reported of all the women there having skin allergies, and not being able to cure that with the medicines they're provided, and they don't have the money to actually try to access higher or better or more expensive healthcare. So the health needs remain under address, and there's not enough counseling or therapy options for the mental impacts of climate change. So what are the needs, the challenges from this residual L&D, and the priorities for financial support based on our findings? So like I said, there's constrained funding because there's a lack of funding from external sources. So Bangladesh has its climate change trust fund, which is not enough to actually, the domestic resources are not enough to fund the local interventions. So there's a lack of resource in that regard. There's also limited institutional capacity. For example, the local government actors, the local government officials, they're not aware about the broader policy targets, policy outcomes. They're only informed about the local budgets and local resources. There's also entrenched social inequalities. Like I said, the absence of a proper framework to address social and non-economic loss and damage leads to this social inequalities and social problems. Urgent priorities based on our findings and consultations are livelihood restoration, need for a diversification of livelihoods. There's also the lack of gender inclusive planning. For example, community members, when we spoke to them, they said that even the embankments are not really gender, they don't really take into account the heights of women when they go into, like, when they have to access the water from the rivers. And that's in addition to the social problems already mentioned, like school dropouts and early marriages and child labor. Also, the need for well-maintained and climate-resilient infrastructure. There's a demand for better climate-resilient infrastructure and houses, and also more regularly maintained cyclone shelters and community clinics to access during crisis. So let's talk about the policy framework of Bangladesh to accompany the findings that we spoke about. We have the National Adaptation Plan, the NDCs, and Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan. So in terms of loss and damage, right now only the National Adaptation Plan is the main priority, and also for government and for the local actors. This is the main adaptation plan policy that's being implemented. So this policy does not really incorporate loss and damage in a direct way. They recognize the necessity of financial resources, and also recognize the need for enhanced disaster risk management, but fail to address loss and damage directly. And this lack of direct address actually can be translated or be evident in the local practices local responses that I just mentioned. There's also the need for dedicated policies, so which leads to policy gaps and recommendations to expand the national mechanism for loss and damage, initiating a comprehensive loss and damage strategy. And these are the findings based on the National Loss and Damage Policy Lab we did in Dhaka, and also on establishing a systematic financial facility to ensure direct access to the funding that can be coming through the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage internationally. So this leads to the efforts on loss and damage, national efforts on loss and damage. Like I mentioned, there's a national mechanism that's being initiated established by the Bangladesh through the Department of Environment with certain NGOs and in partnership. The focus is to actually it's a pilot project. The focus is to actually differentiating between climate-induced and non-climate disasters. There's also importance of coordination, like I mentioned in the policy recommendation. In the LDPL that we had, one important emphasis was made about coordination between the national, local, and also the global framework, so that they're more aligned with each other. Because the local actors, like I mentioned, are not aware about the larger policy schemes. Let's talk about the L&D policy labs in Bangladesh that we had, local and national. So like I've already mentioned a couple of the findings from there. So the aim of this policy labs were to have at least evidence-based policy development to actually inform the policymakers in the national level about the findings from the local level, and That was the aim of the national lab. The local lab was more about facilitating discussion about the needs and gaps that the local government and the local community members are facing. So we gathered some data and insights, and we're working on them right now to actually have a report and another policy brief about that. And we're also focusing on knowledge. Those policy labs were also about knowledge generation, because we have published two policy briefs and based on our findings from the policy labs. Stakeholder engagement is another important part, because the local community members, local stakeholders don't get a chance to often sit in the same table with the local government, with the national policymakers to actually convey their demands and needs. And this policy labs and locally and nationally facilitate that platform for the stakeholders. There's also integration into national frameworks. The one aim of this LTPLs was those LTPLs was working towards embedding local adaptation strategies into national development plans, because some of the local strategies and responses are working, and it's important to actually scale them up and incorporate them into the national strategies. These are the main findings that we had based on our case study and the local and national LTPLs in Bangladesh. Any questions are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Torin, for sharing the brief overview. I would like to request the participants to use the chat box for share any question, any queries for our presenters. Meanwhile, I would like to invite Sneha Rai to share the case study presentation from Nepal. I'd like to request Sneha Rai to share her screen if possible, otherwise we can do that. And can you I'd like to request one more thing, that to keep it short as we are running out of time. Sneha, over to you.
Hi, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll make it short. I know I just have 10 minutes to go. So, hello everyone. I would like to welcome you all from Bangladesh and take a flight from there to Nepal. So, I'll be presenting on the research insights from Nepal, and I will be focusing only on the findings from Nepal. So, my name is Sneha Rai. I am representing Prakriti Resources Center. So, along with other South Asian countries, Nepal is one of the country which is known as the Himalayan country. So, a brief about where we are going, where we are doing this case study is we are doing this in Nepal. In terms of geographical location, it is a sandwiched country between China and India. We have major geographical regions like Himalayan, Mid-Hill and Tarai region. In terms of vulnerability, why do we want to do this work in Nepal is because it is located in one of the youngest and most active mountain ranges, along with frequent earthquakes, climate vulnerability, and rugged topography. There is also unplanned management and anthropogenic intervention with unstable terrain. So, if we go inside Nepal, there is a district. Just give me a moment. So if we go, do you also see the slide?
Yes.
So yeah, if we go inside Nepal, there is a district called Sindhupalchok from 2011 to 2021. In 11 years, there were around 267 disasters in Sindhupalchok. If we go inside in Sindhupalchok, you can see there is Melamchi River, which is one of the highly hazardous for flood, also because the population is concentrated in that high risk areas. And also there is Helambu region, which is highly susceptible to landslide. So if we talk about Melamchi and Helambu, so this is one of the district, one of the municipal, one of the rural municipality in Helambu, that is Chanote, where there was flood in 2021, and it has been like this since 2021 till now. So because of many cascading effect and many factors combined together, there was a major flood event in the downstream. So the study area is Helambu and Melamchi, which are very culturally diverse in ethnic groups and also has religious significance and scenic beauty for tourist attractions. So Helambu is also one of the trade corridor, was historically known for a trade corridor between Nepal and Tibet. So I want to take you to different types of loss and damages that has been recognized by UNFCCC, that is economic and non-economic. For economic, it's the loss, it's where evaluation can be done. For non-economic, it's not easily quantifiable. So we will be focusing on non-economic loss and damages, and particularly in non-economic loss and damages, our study focus on mental health and cultural impacts of loss and damages. So these are the direct quotes from our case studies. They started. I want to give you a context of how the devastation has taken place since 2021 and is still the same there. So how do you explain the pain of losing everything? One respondent said when asked about their psychosocial impact. The other, from the perspective of culture, said that they are not focused on building the stupas, that is Buddhist monastery right now, because they are more focused on restoring their lives and livelihoods, and they fear that if they invest in those areas, then the recurring flood may affect the area again. So other respondents say that the sound of heavy rain makes me feel like the river is coming back, and the other said that it's hard, but we are trying to live again. So what are the key insights on loss and damage that we saw in our case studies is that, let me speak first on cultural loss and damages. We use indicators based on the dimensions. We clearly saw tangible, intangible, and natural heritages that were lost during after the flood. So I want to give a few cases that we saw during our study. We found that although there was no damage in this particular temple, but two funeral shelters and mourning houses were destroyed. We also saw that people where they had their generational cremation sites, they were destroyed, and it was difficult for families to locate them. And also there was sense of connection, the sense of connection between neighbor communities and the people living in those areas that have been affected, because many of them, their friends, their family, their neighbors, they migrated either because of the displacement or because for employment opportunities. So other case study is the Setomane Stupa, which is more linked to Buddhist community. So in this case, although the temple was standing still, all the surrounding areas, the embankment, fence, the covered halls, everything was destroyed, and the community were all displaced. So they are also now not being able to consider to build it again because of the recurring flood that happens every monsoon in those areas. So you can also clearly see the Google map images of how the devastation has taken place before and after the flood. So one of the most impacted area is the entire village that has been wiped out, that is the Chanote Bazaar. So everything in this village was wiped out. So the first slide, the video I showed you, that is also of the Chanote Bazaar area. So it was very vibrant community with people from surrounding Helambu districts. They used to do trade in the Chanote area, but now that has been stopped and reduced in frequency. So this is the picture of Chanote Bazaar before, and this is the picture of Chanote Bazaar after the flood. So in terms of psychosocial impact, what impacts we found during our study is that we found psychosocial impact, and that that was linked to barriers to recovery as well, coping mechanism and resilience as well, and impacts to children and education as well, gender roles, and social bond and community as well. So to go a little bit deeper into the psychosocial impact, what we saw is that the recurring nightmares led to people having hypervigilance especially during the rainy seasons. For example, we got direct quotes like, "The sound of heavy rain makes me feel like the river is coming back." And one of the most things said by the mothers in those communities is "Satogoko," which in Nepali means that the fear is so intense that it paralyzes the body. So other impact is the barriers to recovery. Uh, is the economic hardship they have found, and that has compounded their psychosocial impact. And also because uh, people who used to be rich before the flood, after the flood now they have nothing with them, so it has also affected their dignity as well. So other coping mechanisms were what people have in those community is that people are still trying to live again, but some have gone towards smoking and alcohol consumption in those areas. We also found people having psychiatric care and going to counselors as well. The other phase that was common in those areas was "Pachai Sakim Ailita," which is can be translated to as "I have already digested that incident." But it also shows that the resignation to that incident is they are resignating to that incident, but it's contrary to true healing. So some of the respondents also said that "My peace of mind comes from acceptance. Some things in life are beyond anyone's control, and no one can change the fate." So other what impacts we saw in children is that one of the respondents said that their daughter lost interest in school after a series of disasters in the region. She dropped out of the school and she went to Kathmandu to do a low wage work, so that she can help the family financially. In terms of gender role, what we saw was that women played a crucial role during the preparedness at individual level. So they secured everything like their essential documents, supplies, gold if they have, and they prepared a kit or plastic or something like that so that it would be easy for them to grab and run when the disaster happened. So other thing is social bond and community support as well. People said that compared to before, the sense of mutual support has been declined because everyone is struggling at the same time. So at the end, what we saw is that both psychosocial and cultural impacts were observed in the study areas. So communities, they remain preoccupied with livelihood restoration, and I think the cultural recovery was their secondary thoughts as well. So the other problem in Melamchi and Helambu is that there is recurring flood in both the areas, which exacerbates the challenges of adaptation and the adaptation limit. It's also that both these impacts, although they are termed from the non-economic loss and damage perspectives, the recovery and restoration needs financial sources. So what community needs for immediate needs are the financial support for reconstruction and restoration of those of the cultural sites, and also the counseling services for psychosocial support. They also need to organizations for festivals and events at the municipality level. They also said that they need construction of strong and durable embankments, which does not get washed away easily every monsoon. So it's important those walls are uh, built on time. And the major their concern was the compensation and resettlement plan, which has been delayed till now as well. So in long term needs, it's important that rebuilding disaster resilient climate sites, cultural sites are important to protect the heritages. Also, if the psychosocial resilience programs are community led, that would be more they will be more beneficial to the communities. It's important that the cultural heritage and social impacts are recognized in loss and damage framework as well, and not just DRR plans. It's important also that strengthening of community bond is done so in a way that the community as well as the municipality and the local government are strong, and they are confident to live in those areas without getting the fear of disasters that might happen in the future. So compensation approaches are other methods that has to be strong, and the community so that the community bonds are also strengthened. So responses that we found during the cultural and psychosocial to cultural and psychosocial losses is that the government are trying to promote the cultural programs in those areas. Check dams and are constructed, but they are not as strong as they need to be. There is also psychosocial counselor in Helambu Health Post, but not in Melamchi. So in terms of community, the youth groups and their cultural groups who are slowly but steadily reviving. And also the community expressed that they need to have local government need to have a long-term planning in their areas. So financing pathways, what we saw is that it's important to conduct need assessment based on the community preference. So bottom up approach is necessary, and and services that needs to be delivered in the community should be based on the priorities of the communities themselves. So it's important that the financing are locally led with community control over how they will plan and restore their areas. Direct funding to the community user groups are another option. So it's important also to establish a community disaster fund as well as for cultural recovery. Also, it's important that it's to adapt to post-disaster and subsidized loan service to support community restoration, and user communities needs to be mobilized as active partners in the community. So financing pathways for culture has been prioritized here, because for psychosocial impact, we are still working on that paper. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope I didn't take long.
Thank you, Sneha. Right. I can see a lot of questions in the chat box. I would like to request the presenters to answer those questions. And meanwhile, maybe I will give Ibrahima 3 minutes, as we are running out of time already. We are a little late than the uh, uh, scheduled session. So, Ibrahima, over to you. I will give you 3 minutes, not more than that. Uh, can I request Prithul to share the screen? Ibrahima, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry for the issue. So I did not. I'm not able to share to solve the issue. I don't know. It's the first time it happened. Maybe I will check next time to see why it's happened. Maybe to quickly. Okay. So you can go directly to the presentation. You can go to the next slide. Next slide. So here is only, as I said, a small context on Senegal, or how Senegal is impacted by climate change. Yes. So okay, here us. Yes. So here is our study area where we did our key informal interview. So as I was said, we interviewed 13 villages, and we have interviewed 124 person. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is the sex ratio and the age. So as I was said, in the responder, we have met 65% of man and 35% of women. And in terms of age, the most people we have the most of the responder age are between 36
Vous êtes
to
désormais le
36 to
co-animateur.
Next slide, please. I will try to. So here is we try to see firstly since we are talking about climate index in Los Angeles, we try to see the perception of the population in terms of climate change. So their perception as there are increase in rise in temperature, rainfall decrease, and rise in consecutive dry day, and also late raining season onset. Next slide. So in terms of consequence, these climate change impact strongly activity like agriculture. So in the area there are mainly millet, sorghum, and pineapple, and also livestock. So usually there are cow, sheep, and horse. Next slide. So we try to see in terms of adaptation, what are the adaptation limits? So firstly we identify, since they are faced to climate change, what are the acts that the people take, the own act. So they say that people say that usually they take crop diversification, adaptation, use adapted seed, and also use sometimes fertilizer. But beside their own adaptation options, they get sometimes also adaptation from the government. So that's what we call the main support. The main support from the government as distribution of seed, distribution of fertilizer, and distribution of financial support. Now we try to see how what are the gap in terms of adaptation. People say that there are a shortage in terms of adaptation seed and adaptive seed. There are also what we call also a shortage in fertilizer, but also in terms of financial support, also there are some, like this is the last figure below. So here is a limit of adaptation of what we get from our study area: lack of adaptive seed, lack of fertilizer, and also lack of financial support. Next slide, please. So now, since we are identifying the limit of adaptation, also we try to see what are the loss and damage that they make first. So as already saw with by my colleague, we also try to make a difference between economic loss and damage and also non-economic loss and damage. So we see that in our study area, most of the people say that in terms of economic loss and damage, we have they have loss of seed due to long dry, crop destruction due to rain out of the season, because sometime after the season when they record their crop, sometimes they have money loss also. The last one is a loss of yield. In terms of non-economical loss and damage, also people say that it's the second figure. The people say that more than 60% of people talk about migration, loss of culture and cultural loss, and also biodiversity. Next slide, please, Adiba. So we try to make like people say that, okay, there are migration, there are loss. We try to see. So I was saying that, sorry. So we try to see, since we are talking of migration, since if the migration is due to is linked with climate change or not, because we can't have migration which is not linked to climate change. So we try to see that in terms of migration, people say that why they migrate? They migrate because there are land degradation due to climate change, lack of employment, which is also linked with the land degradation, and also limited resources, because since if you have yield reduction, most of people in this area live due to agriculture and livestock. So if they did not have, if the agriculture is not work and livestock is not good, so there are a limit of resources. So there are mandatory to migrate to see. Usually they migrate in the town to see how they can get more resources to help their family which stay at home. And usually what we see that there are the men who have to migrate. Sometimes you can see some women who migrate, because we meet some women, they migrate, but sometimes there are many problems, because when they come in Dakar, usually they come in Dakar, the capital. So they have no, there are no space. They have to live together. Sometimes they have many problems. Many women have some problem when they come here. Sometimes they are married, and it can help. It can induce some problem between the husband, who sometimes is not here there, and the woman. And the last one, please, in terms of cultural. Next slide, please.
Ibrahim,
So in terms of
hi
cultural
Ibrahim.
also,
We are running out of time. I can give you 1 more
yes,
minute.
it's the last one. It's the last one. So in terms of loss and damage, we also they also say that there are loss of cult and cultural. So we see that also this loss of cult and cultural also are linked to climate change. More than 50% of people say that it leads to climate change, but also it is sometimes we can found also loss of biodiversity, which is also linked to climate change. So we have to more analyze this figure. The next slide, please. It's the conclusion. So in terms of conclusion, so the main climate change manifestation is rise in temperature, rainfall drives. The activity affected by this change is agriculture and livestock in our area of study, because they are more linked. They depend more in agriculture and livestock. In terms of adaptation limits, what we see, there are shortage in adaptive seed, in fertilizer, and also, of course, there are a lack of financial support. And the kind of loss and damage, economical loss and damage, is non-economical loss and damage. So based off these finding, also, of course, unfortunately, we did not realize our policy lab, but we will do it in May. So our policy lab will be mainly focused on migration and also how to get solution for migration, and also. Thank you. Sorry for the issue of the internet. So I was, I'm very happy to share some of our results.
Yes,
Up to
thank
you,
you,
Adiba.
Ibrahim. Yes, thank you. We have a question for you in the chat box. Please, can you answer that in the chat box? Meanwhile, I would like to invite now Dr. Hemant. Hemant, over to you.
What is the question? Excuse me.
Hemant, you there?
Is the question is for me or not?
Yes, we have a question for you, Ibrahim. You can.
Yes. What's the question, please? I'm disturbed by children because I'm at home.
Okay, so I'd like to
Okay,
request the
yeah.
IT.
Now I'm here, Adiba. Yeah.
Yes. As we are running out of time, so we have decided not to go in the breakout room, and we will be discussing the presentation here. Dr. Hemant and Dr. Christopher will be discussing in here. So over to you, Hemant. Do you want
Okay.
to share our screen?
Right. Okay. Thank you, Adiba. So what I will be doing is, so how much time I will be taking? 8-9 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So we all know we have run out of time. So let me share one slide here. It is not showing up. I don't know what is happening. Always one or another technical issue, right? Safari systems.
Hemant, we can also share it from our side.
Oh, it asks me to restart. Maybe you can ask Christopher first to go and then I will join, right? So it is asking me to restart my Zoom. Sorry about that.
Okay. Can I request Christopher?
Yes. Thank you so much. I also had the presentation to share, but it seems that it's disabled participant screen sharing. But look, I just wanted to let you all know about some of the international policy developments.
Sir,
and how-
Christopher, sir, you can share your screen now. We're making you a co-host.
Oh, thank you so much. Perfect. Yeah, I wanted to talk today about some of the international developments with loss and damage policy spaces, but also talk about what Vanuatu is doing domestically. And maybe I'll start there. Just a few slides here. I think there's 5 slides I'll share. Vanuatu has produced now one of the first domestic loss and damage policies anywhere in the world. This isn't a framework, this isn't a strategy. It very much gives very clear policy directions on how the government, in enabling a whole of society approach, will begin to address the increasingly severe impacts of climate change. And so this policy emerged because the impacts are becoming existential, because the finance is simply inadequate to address the responses. And we're conscious that the international community, the multilateral processes are finally beginning to acknowledge the need. And so it was decided that Vanuatu would very clearly articulate the way forward. So the policy is available on the website there, and you can go to the Department of Climate Change and actually read the policy. It will probably be brought to the SB negotiations in Bonn so that we can share our lessons and share the policy priorities. But there are some really interesting elements to this policy. First of all, we talk about who is going to be the lead agency on governing loss and damage, and the multiple agencies that have core roles in governing loss and damage response. We talk about assessments to loss and damage, including the need for long-term loss and damage needs assessments, non-economic and economic assessments of loss and damage, as well as assessments related to slow onset events and rapid onset events. We've also got a policy section really articulating what we mean by programmatic approaches to loss and damage. So this is very different to short-term projects, but rather long-term, holistic, multi-sector programs to address these impacts. We've also got in this policy some really interesting innovation around climate justice. We talk about historical responsibility for loss and damage and exactly how the Vanuatu government proposes to ensure climate justice through perhaps compensation and reparations and other mechanisms which some consider contentious, but we consider essential for addressing these unjust impacts. And then there's quite a substantial section on climate finance. And what we've done is articulated the way that Vanuatu aims to establish its own mechanism, financial mechanism, a fund to address loss and damage, and then disperse that money directly to individuals, to households through cash transfer programs, through small grants, through payment of insurance premiums for fishermen and farmers, etc., but also talks about doing a really holistic consideration of all finance modalities that may address loss and damage, like bringing in humanitarian support, bringing in the concessional loans from the multilateral development banks, bringing in the philanthropies, some innovative taxes and levies. All the systems that can bring finance for loss and damage, which is wholly inadequate now, are brought together into this policy space. I also wanted to very quickly let everyone know that the Fund for Responding for Loss and Damage has made quite a substantial decision at its last board meeting, and that is that they have launched what's known as the Barbados Implementation Modalities, which is going to be an early intervention disbursement of $250 million, hopefully out the door by the end of this year or early next year. The idea here is that particularly vulnerable developing countries will be able to apply for a first grant of between 5 and 20 million US dollars each in order to test and trial some interventions to address loss and damage. And so our policy hopefully will help us to put together a proposal essentially for how we propose to spend this early intervention money. And I would encourage all those on the call to begin thinking about how to use potential resources from the fund to address loss and damage. And we heard some incredible examples of the impacts and the solutions. Now it's time for the fund to step up and deliver. I also wanted to recall that the Santiago Network on loss and damage is open for business. So far, there have only been, well, only one request, and that's from Vanuatu. to help us prepare a country program on loss and damage. And I understand that Iraq has also begun engagement with the Santiago Network on their technical assistance needs. But by and large, there is money, there is a willingness, but countries really do need now to step up and start putting in these international technical assistance requests. So I am particularly interested to hear what other policy responses are happening, particularly at the national and subnational levels, but maybe we can have this as a plenary discussion afterwards. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much for sharing the presentation from Vanuatu. Now I'd like to request Hemant to take the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's already a very interesting range of presentations, 4 country case studies, and then the final policy overview from Vanuatu presented by Christopher. That actually set a very clear, context of where developing countries and climate vulnerable countries should be heading to. We have done a lot of impact analysis. We have also done a lot of potential solution analysis. And as Christopher said, it is now the time to think of how countries can articulate their financing need. And there, one really critical conceptual question is, how do we justify this additional financing need? We have adaptation financing stream, GCF, adaptation fund, they are already operating and dispersing funds. We have humanitarian financing window, disaster and all those. We have development financing also coming from the OECD member countries to support poverty reduction and related environmental problems. So we have all these financing, but then how do we justify the need for this additional? And then we should also recall that the current pledge, the financing that is committed in the loss and damage fund, FRLD, is less than 0.2% of what is required to actually support, restore, climate impact in the most affected parts of the world. So we are in a situation at the moment where, okay, there is some momentum, but then with very little fund at the hand, right? And then those from whom we expect to receive more financing, they often say that, well, we have already provided development finance, adaptation finance. Why do you really need it, right? And then, of course, we all know this loss and damage financing. It has, the debate has been there for over 30 years. And again, Vanuatu was the one to raise it right at the time of UNFC3 formation in 1992, around that. So a lot of contention was there about who should pay for whom and what is the basis, right? But finally, the positive thing, at least to a certain extent, is our colleague Salim Al Haq, whom we lost in the middle as part of this strength project journey. He used to say that we have to actually accept whatever we can get at hand through negotiation and then keep fighting. So that kind of pragmatic approach that developing countries, that vulnerable countries have done. So with that approach, we have something on the table, but that is only and even less than 0.2% of what is required. So what all this means for our strength project is actually to establish a stronger policy rationale for L&D financing. So that is why we have been looking into all those case studies that colleagues presented earlier from Vanuatu to Senegal, to understand what kind of impact is happening, but then what are the adaptation limits, where adaptation financing has stopped. Perhaps it's very difficult to establish that arbitrary boundary, but conceptually we should be always thinking in terms of inadequacy of funding on the one hand, Okay, and then question of justice and restoring all those historical injustice which Christopher also highlighted in Vanuatu's loss and damage policy. So that's the second dimension: justice, human rights, right to development. It's second dimension. But then the third dimension that we are exploring within the Strength project is how do we use this money beyond insurance, beyond again creating another resilience plan at the local level or something like that. Or maybe just investing in some makeshift kind of arrangement, temporary shelter or whatever, which will be washed away again by another flood or another cyclone. So how do we go beyond those kind of quick fixes, incremental, temporary kind of solutions that we have seen in the adaptation domain? So that takes us to questions like relocation, movement, livelihood restoration. And I was in Bangladesh, Barisal a few months back, and I have seen, some of the adaptation work, fantastic adaptation work happening to support those displaced communities. We have come to the city of Barisal, became temporary, migrant, adaptation and development work had supported their immediate shelter, toilet, hygiene, sanitation. But then they are all living at the bank of the river. They have lost their livelihoods. They still remain in the panic. Their trauma is still continuing. They are treated as second-class citizen in the new city, in the new place. So a lot of issues around identity and cultural integration, sometimes conflict with the residents there who have been living before them in the new city. So all those sort of things not covered by adaptation, not covered by DRR financing, not covered by even developmental investment. I think all of these should be calculated as part of loss and damage financing. So I really encourage everyone engaged with this debate of L&D financing to really think critically, in terms of how we can justify this additional financing. What we have is just 0.2%. We need more, and there is going to be more impact, more losses, more damages, more financing, more injustice. And then finally, people in the climate front line, they just don't want to be protected. They just don't want to be resilient. They also want to prosper. They also want to have better education. They also have better imagination for well-being and livelihood improvement. So we cannot just offer things and resources that keep them safe from another flood or another cyclone. We also need more transformative solutions, that can help achieve, help them to achieve their ambition, and then also avoid incremental lock-in, which means you do some solution at this point and that becomes problem, after a few years. That is what we have seen with a lot of investment around embankment and others now becoming problems. So how do we go beyond those kind of incremental lock-in that are solutions today, but then become problem tomorrow? So how do we use this loss and damage financing? It's probably the last opportunity to fix this climate crisis that humanity has created, and then put a large number of people in such a socially unjust kind of situation. So let's think critically about it. We don't have a lot of time to present slides. We have papers, we have policy briefs and all those. So you can refer to that. If any questions, we can talk about that. Thank you, and over to you, Adiba.
Thank you, Hemant. And apologies to the participant. We couldn't do the breakout room as we mentioned, as we're running out of time. But I have managed to actually bought some time for us from the IT team so that we can at least take one or two questions. If you have any questions or anything that you want to add, maybe you can unmute yourself. I'd like to request from the participants to share your question or queries or any suggestions or anything to the panelists, to the presenters. You may go. We can have 3 minutes for the open discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Najib Sugar. I have recently completed graduation degree from National University in Geography and Environment discipline. I I am hearing all the speakers discussion and also presentation, and I have a question that all the this is the collaboration work that we all need to join as a leader to reduce loss and damage which is happening because of natural calamities, and how uh, all the people of our not our country, all the people of our world, how we manage to create awareness, and also for for great for being participated in to mitigate this loss and damage which is happening around the world, especially in subcontinent as well as African continent. That is the question from me to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your question, Nazib Sugan. So, anyone wants to answer? Can I request Hemant, if possible?
Hello? Yeah. So the question was, how do we tackle the question of loss and damage in African continent, right? Okay. Yeah. So I think you are right. Every region is very different in terms of one impact. Some experience flood more than drought, others have cyclone. So we have to have that disaggregated risk profile, right? And then what I really find critical at this point in time is to formulate national level loss and damage direction, and few countries have done that, and we heard the example of Vanuatu, right? So if all the African countries, especially those which are more vulnerable than others, they come together in a small sub-regional group, maybe East Africa, West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and we have Senegal there in West Africa, right? So if those sub-regional countries sharing similar risks come together to formulate their national policy direction, but then also sharing knowledge and ideas between the countries, I think that would be a very important first step, because we now know that this FRLD is rolling out its first round of financing later in the year or maybe early next year, 5 million to 20 million to support testing of initial L&D actions, not just technical action, but also institutional, governance options as well. So it's really important that countries begin to think in terms of that national direction, policy options, delivery modalities, and then get some financing that will put you into traction, to explore more, learn more, build on those, right? So that will be a first important step, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, Hemant. I can see a question of sharing the recording. That Gobeshona team actually from ICCCAD is planning to upload all these recordings from our official YouTube channel, ICCCAD's official YouTube channel. So once it's uploaded, once it's online, we will be actually sharing the link with all of you. Apart from that, maybe we will be also sharing a thank you email, thank you note with all, so that we are in touch. First, this is the beginning of discussion. So with that, maybe we can take one more question.
Hello.
Yes, Shohan.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Sohan. I work with YouthNet Global. And I am from Borishal city, and my organization headquarters also in Borishal. So thank you, ICCCAD, for conducting these study in Borishal, Shodor, and Mehendigons. So it's a good findings about loss and damage, and it's, I think, fast assessment or kind of research in my city. So what's the next plan to, influence the national loss and damage mechanism through this evidence, or the community need urgent support? So how we can, and they are going to beyond the adaptation and they're facing this kind of loss and damage. So how we can support them with new programming, and how can fit these findings in the national loss and damage mechanism. So what's plan ICCCAD have to engage local CSOs and youth organization to this? Thank you. Over to Adiba.
Yes. I would like to request Torin Apu, if you are with us, can you answer the question? She's not with us, unfortunately. Maybe Hemant, can you just start and maybe I can share some insight as well.
Well, great. I think somebody from ICCCAD would be better placed. From strength point of view, what I could say is we have a plan to do another round of loss and damage policy lab in Borishal, and then possibly bringing that outcome to the national level lab as well. So basically, our approach within the STEM project is to integrate evidence from case studies, is to bring the voices of those who are affected, and also bring key actors, leading actors locally into one roundtable kind of situation, and then build a collective kind of effort, right, to take it back to the national level. So that's the process we have through Loss and Damage Policy Lab. And if I remember correctly, our ICCCAD team led by Taurin has a plan to do another round, because so far a lot of work was focused on analysis and case study. One round of loss and damage policy lab as well, but that was also exploratory. But now is the time to move more towards solution and linking that ideas of solution and voice from Barishal to Dhaka. So that, I think, should be the priority for our ICCCAD strength team. Thank you.
Yes. With that, I would also like to include two things, that we will be also hosting events from the STREM project in the international conferences like COP and ASB. We are still trying to manage our badges and everything. So in case if we are able to actually host those sessions, we will be actually inviting those who are interested. So yes, thank you, Hemant. And for Shohan, I will convey your message to the team with Torin, who's leading the research part of this project. I'll convey your message. With that, maybe I would like to request everyone to turn off on their camera so that we can take a photo and then we can close the discussion. Thank you, everyone. Can I request the Zoom team to capture the photo?
Yes, Apu, give me a few seconds. Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Please close the call. Zoom team.
Thank you, everyone.